Okay, real talk for a second before we get into this. Most crypto news channels are going to read you the press release and call it a day. We're not doing that. Because buried in this Ripple announcement is a number that most people are going to scroll right past, and once you hear it, you'll understand why this one's actually worth your full attention. Stick with me here. This is XRP Financial Horizon, and let's get into it. Ripple just got full authorization as a crypto asset service provider from Luxembourg's financial regulator, the CSSF. Say that 5 times fast, or don't, because here's the plain version. Ripple now has a complete official license to run its crypto payments business across the entire European Economic Area, not one country, 30 of them, under a single set of rules. If you've ever dealt with paperwork across different countries for anything, you know how rare it is for one approval to open 30 doors at once. Let's rewind slightly because context actually matters here. Back in June, Ripple got what's called preliminary approval under the EU's MiCA rules, MiCA being short for markets in crypto assets. Preliminary approval sounds nice, but it's basically a hall pass, not a diploma. You're allowed to keep going, but you haven't actually finished anything yet. What Ripple has now is the finished version. Full compliance, fully signed off, no asterisks next to it. Now, quick honest question. Why should you care about a licensing document from a European regulator you've probably never heard of before today? Here's why. Before MiCA existed, a crypto company wanting to operate across Europe had to collect separate approvals from nearly every country individually, which was slow, expensive, and honestly kind of a mess. MiCA fixed that by creating one shared rulebook. Get approved once, and you can generally operate across the whole EU. Ripple just became one of the small number of companies that actually pulled that off completely. Here's the part that actually moves the needle for Ripple's business. With this license in hand, Ripple can now pitch its full payments platform directly to banks, corporations, and other businesses anywhere across that 30-country region. Think about every bank that's wanted to touch crypto infrastructure but held back because they needed proof the partner was legitimate first. That hesitation just lost its excuse. Ripple can now walk into a meeting and say the license is already done instead of saying it's still in progress. And in enterprise deals, that timing difference alone can decide who wins the contract. Cassie Craddock, who leads Ripple's Europe and UK operations, gave a comment on this that's worth breaking down instead of skimming. She said Ripple is now entering what she calls the post-transitional MiCA era, fully compliant and ready to scale. In plain English, Europe gave crypto companies a grace period to get their licensing sorted, and that grace period is closing. Companies without full approval risk getting shut out once it ends. Ripple isn't rushing to beat that clock. They already crossed the finish line while others are still tying their shoes. She made another point that's easy to miss if you're just glancing at headlines. According to Craddock, the institutions Ripple works with across Europe specifically want partners that are properly regulated, not just companies that are friendly toward crypto in general. That's a real shift in how banks are thinking these days. After years of blow-ups and collapses in this industry, trust me doesn't work anymore with serious financial players. They want documentation. They want audits. They want exactly what Ripple just secured. Let's talk numbers for a second, because they tell a story on their own. Ripple is now among a very small group of crypto firms worldwide holding full MiCA authorization. Most companies in this space are still stuck in the preliminary stage or haven't even applied yet because clearing this bar is genuinely difficult. European regulators aren't handing these out to check a box. So a full approval, especially for a company the size of Ripple, says something real about how much work went into getting this right instead of cutting corners. And here's a bigger number that puts everything in perspective. Ripple's total collection of regulatory licenses around the world has now crossed 75. 75 approvals across different countries doesn't happen from luck or from hiring one good lawyer for a week. That number represents years of slow, unglamorous compliance work happening quietly in the background, while a lot of the crypto industry was busy either avoiding regulators or fighting them outright. Ripple took the harder, slower road, and today is more proof that road is starting to pay off. Now here's the question you're probably actually here for. What does any of this mean for XRP itself? Ripple's core payments business runs on using XRP to move money across borders quickly and cheaply. Every new region Ripple gets cleared to operate in isn't just a corporate win on paper, it's a potential new source of actual transaction activity involving XRP. More licensed markets means more banks and businesses that can legally plug into Ripple's payment corridors. That's the difference between speculation and real usage is what tends to matter most once you zoom out past the daily price swings. Worth pointing out too why Luxembourg specifically matters here. This isn't some random small country picked for a quiet announcement. Luxembourg is one of the biggest financial hubs in Europe, home to an enormous concentration of banks and investment funds. Getting full approval from a regulator with that kind of reputation carries weight with other regulators and institutions watching from other countries. It's the equivalent of getting approved by the toughest grader in the room, and that tends to make people elsewhere pay closer attention. Timing is another piece worth sitting with. Europe has been tightening these MiCA requirements for a while, and plenty of crypto companies are still racing to get compliant before the transition period closes for good. Ripple locking in full approval right as that window shuts puts them ahead of competitors who are still filling out forms or waiting on regulator responses. Being early and being fully ready at the same time is a genuine advantage in a newly regulated market, and it's the kind of head start that's tough to make up once it's gone. It's also worth acknowledging Ripple isn't the only company chasing this European opportunity. Other players in crypto infrastructure and stablecoins have been pursuing similar approvals, some further along than others. What sets Ripple apart isn't just the license itself, it's pairing that license with years of existing banking relationships and infrastructure that's already built and running. A license by itself doesn't guarantee business results, but a license stacked on top of an established network is a much stronger position than starting from scratch. Let's stay grounded here for a second, because hype doesn't help anyone make good decisions. This license doesn't mean XRP suddenly rockets tomorrow, and it doesn't erase every regulatory conversation Ripple still has going on in other parts of the world. Markets move on, plenty of factors beyond a single announcement. What this does confirm is that one of the largest financial regions on the planet is now fully open to Ripple's business, and that kind of groundwork tends to matter a lot more a year from now than it does in tomorrow's price chart. If you're someone thinking long-term about this space, this is exactly the type of update worth remembering, even if it doesn't make headlines outside crypto media. So here's the short version if you're catching up. Ripple secured full MiCA authorization through Luxembourg's CSSF, putting it in a small group of crypto companies that have actually completed this process. That approval opens access to 30 countries under one regulatory framework, strengthens Ripple's position when pitching banks and corporations across Europe, and adds to a global license count now past 75. Whatever happens with price action this week, this is the kind of foundational move that tends to make a lot more sense in hindsight than it does in the moment. Quick question before you head out. Do you think regulatory wins like this actually shift how institutions view XRP long-term, or is the market too short-term focused to price this in properly? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely go through them, and they shape what we dig into next. If this kind of grounded, no-hype breakdown is what you're after, stay close, because there's more connected to this story we're already looking into. See you in the next one.